I am Dr. Archana Durgesh, and I'm going to take your lectures on communicative English. I'm from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, BBD University. So before we begin formally with your syllabi, that is on communicative English, let me first make you understand what is communication. Basically, communication is a term that has been derived from the Latin term communicare, which means to share. And this sharing is of emotions, values, knowledge, and how you put it. Communication has a vast history. You can say you can trace it back to a very long period of time. Like we say that mechanical is a oldest subject in human civilization. But you know something, communication is the oldest subject. If you look at the history books, you'll find that prehistoric man hunted in such a way, hunted in that way. They lived in caves. They knew about fire. They knew about pulley. How do you know that they knew about all this stuff? Because they left the carvings, they left the paintings on the walls of the caves. How they lived, where they lived, and what they ate, and what they knew about. That is how they left, and we know that such a such knowledge was there with the man even in that period of time. That is communication. Communication has been derived from the Latin term, which means to share, and this sharing is of emotions, as I've already told you. But before we move on, communication is a very wide subject. You have to express yourself, and how you express is more important as what to express. So before we begin with the formals, I would tell you how the process of communication works. Like the first stage of communication is where there is a sender, and the sender goes through a phase or a stage of ideation. Ideation is thinking. Like when you were little, you were told, do you ever think before speaking? बोलने से पहले कभी सोच लिया करो. Yes, that was ideation. You have to think before you speak. So ideation, after crossing the eighth stage of ideation, the sender what does is that he encodes the message. The message is encoded in accepted code symbols. That is a language that is known to the receiver as well as to the sender. Because you factor is always involved. Sender is important, but receiver is more important. Why? Because he has to understand, she has to understand what you're talking about. What actually are you expressing? So after the message has been encoded and has been sent, it requires a channel. Channel is the medium through which you send your communication, rather you share your communication. So what happens is that before you put your communication, rather you send it to the channel, the viability of the channel has to be checked. How do you think that it's viable? Is it okay or not? Is it sufficient or not? Like suppose if there is a very urgent message, what will I do? Will I email you? What if you don't check your mails? You ask me, I don't check my mails every day. So you cannot communicate with me when you have to communicate something very important via mail. What you have to do is that you call or you WhatsApp me. But after 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes or an hour, if you see that I'm not online and the message hasn't been delivered because it's not double tick or it's not blue tick, and maybe I have read it but I have not responded. So you have to keep the communication going. You have to ask the receiver, why has this happened? Why haven't you communicated with me yet? So that is where the role of feedback comes in. The receiver receives the message, decodes the message, and on the basis of that decodation, he sends a feedback to the sender. Then the sender is rest assured that the way, in the fashion in which the communication was put, has reached the receiver the way he perceived it. Because the interchange of perception really matters. Like communication is a two-way process. It's not a one-way process. Like if I say, what's your name? So you'll randomly answer that my name is this. What if I say, so what will you do? You'll run to my help and you'll come up with a glass of water. But did I ask for a glass of water? No. I was just coughing and I was feeling uncomfortable. And I did like this. That is non-verbal communication. Communication can be divided into three categories. The verbal, that is subdivided into oral and written, and the non-verbal. So here I'm going to share my notes with you. They are the edited versions. You can use them as primary source or the secondary source, or just for reference. You can add, omit, and edit according to your own wish and fancy. But these notes have been edited in a way, they have been put together so that they suffice the curricula, the syllabi that has been given to you, especially I'm talking about the BSc students. This syllabus has these units, yeah, rather these notes have been designed for the purpose of BSc students for the subject of communicative English. So I'm about to share my notes. Please see. It is communicative English, and what we are going to do is module 1, which is orientation to communication. These notes have been edited in a way so that you can make them as primary source. You can even interchangeably use them as secondary source, as I've already told you. You can omit if you wish because they are lengthy for better understanding and comprehension. But please don't edit or omit anything because they are designed according to your syllabi. So if we move on to the first topic, that is the introduction of communication, it is said that there is nothing possible without communication. Unless and until I know what to say and how to say, the communication cannot be done. Communication is an art. But if you are taking it art, then not as a subject, but as a skill. Communication is the greatest skill. So what you do is, without communication, the sending and the receiving of the information is not possible. The person sending the message is referred to as the sender or the encoder because he is encoding the message. And the receiver is known as the decoder because he is decoding the message. And all this communication is done in accepted code of symbols. Accepted code of symbols is like English and Hindi. For example, if I say, Kamabu Zaplemu, I'm asking you, Kamabu Zaplemu, Kela Jate? Wait, how it is in? You won't be able to understand because it's French and German. Because you don't know French and German. You know only English, Hindi, or maybe your regional language. If I say, Malamat Nai, Akka din gosht karecha nai, devacha naam ghe. You won't be able to understand because it's Marathi. You're not acquainted with Marathi. Language is learned in two ways. Either you acquire or you learn. So what happens is that if you acquire, then it's through the environment. Like suppose a child grows up and one day when he starts going to school, he says, I'm not going to school today, my tummy is hurting. आज मेरे पेट में बहुत दर्द है. How does a child know that dard means pain? Because it's through environment that he has acquired this. He hasn't been formally made to sit and learn the way you are taught at school or in college or in university. It's not that. So what happens is that when we talk about communication and interchanging, then the other way out is when you learn languages through learning. Like you have learned ABCD, you have learned E at school. That is what learning is all about. Like you have learned the binary operations, you have learned about the structures of teeth, that is canines, molars, and premolars. What is this? This has been taught to you at school. You have learned it. So this is not acquisition. Acquisition is when, for example, if I say Malayalam kid is adopted at the age of 6 months by a Punjabi parent. So what will the child talk in? Malayalam or in Punjabi? The child will talk in Punjabi because he was just 6 months old and the reception was not there. Language is learned in 4 stages. LSRW. learning, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So when you cross all these stages, you learn a language. Communication is always done through language. Language is a tool of communication. Now, if we move on to the definition of communication, it's a two-way process I've already explained between the sender and the receiver. Um, Communication, if you seek my opinion, then it has a very simple definition, and it means reaching mutual understanding. If suppose in my class some student is talking and I say, hmm, if I cue with my finger on my lips and that student understands, is looking at me, and if I cue him, or rather if I say with my finger, I wave him off of my class. So what does that mean? He gets up and says, Mom, I'm sorry. Because he thinks that he was involved in some kind of an indiscipline. He was doing something which was not appropriate for the class. His way of sitting, maybe his way of interacting was not appropriate, was not apposite for that environment. Apposite means appropriate, which is not suitable for that environment. So maybe, and then he stands up and he says, sorry. Did I seek for his apology? Did I ask him to apologize? No. But he reached that understanding because I was involved in some kind of a indiscipline, because I was talking to my friend. So maybe ma'am saw that, and perceiving it as a disturbance in the communication, she is asking me to leave the class. So that is what mutual understanding is all about. Like a couple of minutes back, I gave you an example where I was coughing and I made a gesture for a glass of water and somebody gave me. So that is reaching mutual understanding. For example, another example, if I am taking your class attendance and I look around on the table and I search for something in my pockets and it's not there. And then opening my attendance gesture, I put my palm forward. So what am I asking for? A glass of water? What am I asking for? I'm asking for a pen. And suddenly, on the spur of a moment, a student hands me a pen. So that is where the communication is completed, why the student has understood that what I was asking about, what I was talking about. Now, if we move on to our next topic, that is types of communication. Types of communication. So basically, the types of communication involve verbal and non-verbal communication, and verbal can be further bifurcated into written and oral. So technically, you can say that it's three types. Basically, it's just of two types, verbal and non-verbal. But here we'll categorize them into three, and they'll be written, oral, and non-verbal. Verbal is the first category, as the word suggests, that it is done through words. So, like if I talk about words, then words are very short-lived. They are ephemeral. They are ephemeral means short-lived. So, what you need to do is that words can be expressed in two ways: written or oral. So, what I am going to talk about is the oral first, because oral communication is really very important. What Because when you are communicating, you may be sitting in front of that person, you may not be present there in front of that person. So what here we are going to discuss is verbal communication. Verbal communication is when the message or the information is exchanged or communicated through words. It's the play of words actually. So it may be written or oral. But what now I am going to discuss is face-to-face oral communication, where you can go where the examples you can take is group discussion, counseling, interview, radio, television, calls, and in case of written, you can take the example of memos, letters, reports, notes, emails. So, when if you take the definition of Bowie or Bowie in consideration, then verbal communication is expression of information through language, which is composed of word and grammar. Like if you're talking, so grammar doesn't, usually makes any very huge difference. But when you come to the written communication, grammar plays a vital role, because even before submitting a small text, you have to check whether there are grammatical errors or not, because like there are predictive texts available. So you have to keep a check on the written communication when you are doing this. Like according to Primrose and others, verbal communication consists of sharing thoughts through meanings of words. So verbal is a process of exchange information or messages between two or more people through written or oral words. Like verbal communication can be done with through oral media or through written media. Now, if you compare and contrast, then verbal has no longevity. As I've already told you, it's ephemeral. Words are ephemeral. They die the moment you speak them out. But written has sort of what do you call that? Legality attached to it. Legality is a very huge term. But if you say the what do you call that term? The author's credibility is attached to it. Why? Because somewhere that thing has been given in written. So written communication is more important than verbal communication. And the word verbal has been derived from the Latin term verbal, which means communication done with words. And communication, which means, which has been derived from the Latin term communicare. So if you put them together, then verbal communication means sharing meanings and things by means of words, because language has always been used as a tool of communication. Verbal communication can be taken to mean many different things. However, one thing is always clear, that words must be involved in verbal communication. Words have been used for centuries as carriers of meaning. However, strictly speaking, both the communication use words. Both are verbal. That is oral and written. If we take, for example, the oral communication, then oral communication is maximum. Why? Because oral communication is what we all do. We keep on doing oral communication all the time. We don't stop. And written communication has its limitations. Time is there, and you even to an extent you can even say that the written communication though has credibility attached to it, but it's time taking. Even oral is not that time taking. So you can always use oral communication in place of written communication. But if you have to add credibility to it, then you have to use written communication, because written communication has longevity, even, and credibility and legality attached to it. Now, if we talk about non-verbal communication, that is the second type of communication that I was sharing my views about. Non-verbal communication. This is done through actions. When you were a young boy or girl, you must have got these essay writing things. Action speaks louder than words. So basically, non-verbal communication involves actions. Actions in the sense that non-verbal has been divided into categories. And if you wish to remember these categories, then the best part is that you remember them through COPACT. There is an acronym which means, which is like COPACT, KOPPACT. COPACT, in COPACT, K stands for kinesics. People usually even call it kinesics. It's the science of body language, like how you hold your body, the facial expressions, the gestures, the postures, the eye contact, everything involves kinesics or kinesics, that is the science of body language. If you talk of the second alphabet, that is O, it means oculexis. Oculexis means communication done with eyes. Like when we were very little, if we went to somebody's place and they offered us some eatables, like if imagine yourself in a situation where you have gone to your father's friend's house and you have been offered something to eat, say you some very delicacies, delectable things you like eating, and you look at your mummy, or if your dad is there, you look at your dad. And if they make a gesture with their eyes, it's a soft gesture, and they blink their eyes in affirmation. What do? You pick up the thing and you eat it. But if suppose they made a very stringent and strict look with their eye, would you dare to pick up from the platter? No. You simply say, I had it, I'm full, I won't be able to eat. So, no, that is how communication is done with eyes. The communication with eyes is a very delicate information, and I would like to, enlighten you on this. If you, it will take a bit extra time, but I'll tell you something. Before, like, if you talk about kinesics, we can go back to kinesics even if you wish, and it talks about the facial expressions, the gesture, and the postures, and the eye movement. The anthropologist Ray Birdwhistell in 1952 gave this dictum about kinesics. He said that kinesics is basically culturally bound, and because if you know it, then you will be able to understand it. But if you don't know it, then you won't be able to understand it. So, like there are so many gestures. Like if I put my pointing finger and touch it to the thumb, so it means okay. Like suppose if I offer my son something which he really likes to eat, and I ask him how is it, he joins his pointing finger with his thumb and makes a gesture which says excellent, awesome. But in certain cultures, it may mean differently. It may mean something very insulting and demeaning. So if in a cultural communication, in a cultural perspective, you know the body language, it's okay. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand it. Facial expressions are very quick. Before you can read them, they can change. Paul Ekman and Wallace V. Ferguson gave a research on micro expressions, and they divided kinesics in 5 categories. The emblems that can replace the verbal communication. So, for example, if you ask me, "Are you hungry?" and if I point my head from left to right, it's an emblem, and I can say that I'm not hungry. Illustrated when you add to the verbal messages, like suppose if like I told you, like you can point your you can touch your pointing finger with your thumb and you can say that the food is awesome. Effective displays when you unintentionally uh, act, they affect the facial expressions and the gestures. Like they are, affective displays. You cannot hide them. And one thing, before I move on, I must really tell you that body language cannot be faked. You cannot lie with your body. And there is a very valid reason for that. Like since the early childhood, we are taught that truth prevails. झूठ बोलने वाले को हमेशा सजा मिलती है. झूठ बोलने वाले को दोजक की आग में जलना पड़ता है. So this is, it gets embedded in our psyche, that fear that if we lie, then what will happen. So you cannot lie with your body, because in your subconscious mind, the dictum is already there with you, which keeps on reminding you that you must not lie, come what may. So if you lie verbally, it's possible. If I say, I told you that my name is Archana Durgesh and I'm from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. What if I say, I'm Archana and I take algebra? Am I sounding that confident? Am I looking that confident? I won't be, because I won't be able to lie with my body. I am not a person with a mathematical background. I know nothing about mathematics. How will I able to say that? If I say I know German, and if you ask me to speak in German, I cannot communicate much in German because I won't be able to do that. And how can I sound confident in that? The way I can sound confident in Hindi and English. So these are affective displays. They actually are affected by your facial expressions, gestures, and postures. Then you have adapters. You acclimatize to the environment. For example, if I'm teaching in the class and suddenly there is electricity failure, what I'll do, I'll start fanning my face with my hand. Students will start fanning their face with their nose. So what is this? This is adapter. This is how we acclimatize ourselves to the environment. Like I don't know, like I know, because I'm not that very habitual in watching movies, but today if you go to malls, they are properly lightened up. If you are late, the staircase is in certain places that I've gone like Fun and Riverside. The stairs are marked with a blue lining, the blue lighting, and you're able to make out the J and the L and the A and the 7 and the 5. They are written explicitly and they're lighted up. So what happens is that you're able to see your sitting plan. But years back, when people used to go to cinema halls, what happened was if you anyhow reached late, what happened always was that you won't be able to make out for a couple of minutes where you are standing, because if you came in from sunlight for a certain period of time, you were never able to acclimatize yourself with that dark environment. You thought that no, you can't see anything and people cannot see you, but actually people sitting there have already been acclimatized with the darkness and you are new to it. So eyes cannot adjust, and these are adapters where, for example, if dust goes in your eyes or it's too dark, pitch dark, and you are not able to see, what do? You rub your eyes. That is how adapters work. There is a quote I would like to say about kinesics, that is body language. Deafness has left me acutely aware of both the duplicity that language is capable of and many expressions that body cannot hide. It's by Terry Galloway, and Terry actually, I'll cut short for you. Terry met with an accident once, and he was indisposed for quite a period of time on bed. So when his nurse came or his family members came, he used to very closely observe their body language, and then he realized that how people, what people say, and what actually is going on in their mind. You cannot fake your body language. So if we come to oculexis, then oculexis is communication done with eyes, where you express yourself beautifully with the behavior of eyes or movement. Like scholars like Ventus have says have said that language of eyes is very different. Oculexis is eye behavior. Looking at and looking away in oculexis both mean. Like if I'm looking at you, that means I'm giving you attention. But if I'm looking away from you, which means I am not giving you that attention. It covers all. How, for how long, where you look, and again, culture comes in. Like in Asia, having a long eye contact is considered rude. Lowering your eyes and talking is a sign of respect. But if you go to American culture, then not looking into the eyes and communicating means disrespect. Now, again, if you come to the bifurcation of oculexis, then there are emblems. Like someone is looking at me, so it can mean that she's testing me, she's trying to make out in what kind of level I'm standing up to, where do I stand, what is my standard, what is my status. They're illustrators. They they actually add meaning to what we are saying. Then they are affective displayers. They actually describe. Cervantes has given a very beautiful definition. He says description of oculexis is when it is the silent tongue of love. It's a beautiful description. He says that eyes are silent tongues of love. Why? Because through one tongue you can only say in words, but with eyes you can communicate more. There are regulators, like when we are listening, when we want to talk, when I'm looking somewhere else, or adapters when you adapt to the environment. Like I gave you the example of cinema halls. There are many factors involved, like the length of eye contact. The length of eye contact is somewhat, you can say, communicative signal. Like if I'm giving you avoidance, then it will be of nearly about 1 by 25th of a second. If I'm giving you a darting look, which means that you are somewhere you'll feel insecure. Like London studies says that if you continuously give a gaze of about a fixed gaze of about 3.25 seconds, it means trustworthiness. Now, if you talk about the intensity of the look, then it could be a killing look, it can be a softened gaze, it can be a looked sharply, like you can say, for example, his eyes were like blunt, sneering, crazed, piercing, and accusing. Even the direction in oculixes matter, where in what direction you are looking. For example, uh, like if you say there is a book on what managers need to know about communication. It was written in 1999 by Darlene Arlov and Michelle. It said that if you are giving comfort side glance, it it means something else. But there are three zones in which a gaze can be divided. I told you that the direction matters. So the direction is divided into this zones, and the first zone is of comfort zone, which is even known as the social or the intimate zone. It actually covers the face, the eyes, and then you have the mouth to a certain extent. Then you have power gaze. Power gaze involves your forehead. For example, if I'm a person of authority, then I'll be giving you a power gaze that will be fixed on your forehead, maybe till your nose, but not your mouth. Then there is, uh, you can say, the third and the last is public gaze, like where I cover your whole face. I can cover your full profile. Even if you are standing in front of me, if you are visible till torso because you are standing behind the desk, or if you are standing a bit far, so I can take you in complete profile. Then you have proxemics or paralanguage. And paralanguage. Proxemics actually, as the cultural anthropologist, this in his book The Hidden Dimension, said, the author was uh, Edward T. Hall, and he divided the proxemics in four categories: the intimate, the social, public, and the personal. Intimate involves a person who's very close to you, say your mother, father, spouse, child, and then so this then is the personal zone, which involves about extended family, friends. Then you have the social zone, which involves your acquaintances and colleagues. Then the public zone, which involves public you don't know, you hardly interact with. It is till the portion you can see, listen, or hear. Now, what I have talked about by now in the case of proxemics is the horizontal distance. What I was telling you about the intimate, the personal, social, and the public was in horizontal. But there is even a sense of vertical distancing. If you talk about the vertical distancing, then there are categories like territorial. Territorial in the sense it's a bubble wrap, it's movable. Like I don't interact with everybody, I don't communicate, I don't share my feelings with everybody. If we take the example of Sushant Singh Rajput, he committed suicide. You know, these kinds of people, they don't, you get into such suicidal tendencies and you don't communicate with people. Actually, you are wrapped up in your bubble. You are not allowing people to come into your bubble so that you can communicate with them. It should be avoided. It's movable, and wherever you go, you move. So, and then there is, it is like occupancy of your body. It's in the occupancy of your body. And then there is primary territoriality. Primary can even be known as your home territory, where you live, the house, the office, the car that you own, because they even talk a lot about you. Like secondary, if I say interactional, like work location, public, that anybody can come and move. Now, here, before we move on, I must tell you that they can be used interchangeably. Like, for example, my primary occupancy is my office, and my office number is 108. It's on the second floor, and the room number is 108. I share it with my colleagues. So, if I talk about my territoriality, it is my primary place because it's my office. But it becomes secondary because I interact with people. My students are allowed to come in. They can come and communicate with me all the time because I'm available. But it becomes public when a person who is not employed, who's not seek admission in my university and still comes to meet, then it becomes a public zone. So it can be used interchangeably. There are territorial markers. Because this is something which I'm telling you for your knowledge. Territorial markers are like the central markers. For if I say, example, bag or a hand on the bench. Like you are sitting in the student mall and somebody comes up and they say, I want to sit here, but you put your hand on the chair and you say it's already taken. You come first in the class and you put your bag. That is a territorial marker. That is the central marker. But if you put a boundary marker, that is the boundary around your house or a fence, there is another territorial marker that is ear marker, which you put a poster on your tape on your door and you say, keep out, please do not disturb, no entry without permission. So these are ear markers. Okay, so we have covered the K, O and the P. Sujit, Sujit.
Three.
So dear students, today we have learned about communication. We have I have told you about communication. I have told you about the verbal communication, and the written communication and the oral communication. I have even started your topic on non-verbal communication. The non-verbal communication, as I told you, can be categorized in four parts. So we have covered kinesics. The correct pronunciation of kinesics is kinesics, and then we have covered the oculexes, and then we have covered the proxemics. In the next lecture, I am going to start with the second P, that is the paralanguage. Then we'll do artifacts, then we'll do phonemics, and then we'll do touch. So see you soon in my second lecture. Thank you so much.